This is Get Real with Bob and Stacy, the show that helps you learn about the mortgage and real estate markets. Get the inside scoop from their expert list of guests and have some fun along the way. Now, here's Bob Gallagher and Stacy Alcorn.
Welcome back. You're listening to Get Real. I'm your host, Bob Gallagher. Joining me in the studio today, we have Keith Magnus from Engel and Volkers in Wellesley. Welcome to the show, Keith.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you very much.
We also have Mike McCormick from Ross Mortgage joining us. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks, Bob. It's a pleasure to be here.
Is this your first time? I can't remember now.
This is my first time.
This is your first time? Oh, how about that? So, Keith, we asked you onto the show so you could talk to us about the real estate market in general. You're a realtor and you cover, Boston out to Metro West? Is that more or less where you are?
I do, yes. I do a lot of work in Boston, and I work out to the suburbs as well.
Okay, great. So why don't you give us a real estate market update on, the areas you cover, Massachusetts in general?
It's been an interesting year. I feel like this year specifically, I've been working with fewer buyers, which is funny because the rates, as Mike will tell you, are historically low.
Yeah.
And I've been working with a lot more listings, which is great. And I operate a lot in Sudbury and some of those surrounding towns where historically you've got some quieter price points that this year have been pretty active.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good news.
It is good news, especially on the high end, which is great.
Wow. And when you say high end, what's high end in Sudbury?
In Sudbury, I'd say high end is maybe 1.5 million up beyond there. I mean, we've seen 2 historic sales this year in Sudbury. We sold the highest in 12 years, which was $3.25 million.
Wow!
And now there's actually a $4 million home on the market.
And is it big at least, or is it just because it's Sudbury?
It's big. You don't have a pool, but it's a very, very large home, and it's gorgeous. It's a beautiful home. But that home in Weston or Wellesley or Newton would be $7 million.
And I suppose if you got the $4 million for the house, putting a pool in is probably not a big deal.
I would hope not. If that's your drop deadline, maybe you don't buy the $4 million home.
Yeah. I mean, I have to tell you, if I was going to spend $4 million on a home, I'd probably want the pool just because. I mean, you'd think. Why not have a pool?
Yeah.
Although if you're spending $4 million, chances are you have a house on the ocean or a lake or something. So maybe you don't want the pool.
Yeah, this is also true. To each their own.
Yeah, there you go. Well, that's great news because we've been hearing a lot lately about the higher end kind of, I think you were saying, kind of getting sleepy in other towns. But, I mean, for 1.5 and up to be moving in Sudbury, that's a pretty good indication, right?
I think it's a pretty good indicator. And a lot of these listings, I was talking with Mike earlier, a lot of these listings have been on the market in the past and haven't been selling, and we're having success with them. And other brokers are too.
Wow.
We do a lot of work in Weston, Wellesley, our office is in Wellesley. Some of those towns, there's a lot on the market, but some of the high price point stuff is sitting around.
Right.
But at the same time, my broker specifically has had a lot of success this year. Last year, we took over number 2 in market share in Weston.
Wow.
And a lot of our listings are selling. It comes down to marketing and strategy and prepping your seller and pricing.
And what do you think is attracting people to Sudbury?
I think Sudbury is coming back to becoming a really attractive town for people because it's not all that far from Boston if you think about it.
No, it really isn't.
I think a lot of buyers are looking in Sudbury now who have been looking in Weston, Wellesley, Wayland, and they can't get what they want there because either it doesn't exist or you just you don't get the same thing for your money. And Sudbury is a great town, great schools, convenient, a lot going on. You get great land, privacy. There's a lot going for it. And they're building. There's a brand new Whole Foods. There's shops. There's coffee shops. It's an attractive town.
So you're probably likely to get a bigger lot size in Sudbury than you are in Weston and Wellesley, or
for the most part, you're really going to pay for it in those other towns. In Sudbury, I would say, and I don't know this, so anyone who works or lives in Sudbury, don't slap me, but the average lot is at least an acre, and a lot of the homes are 2-3 acre lots.
Oh wow!
On certain streets, so you get a lot of nice land and privacy.
So, and I'm guessing the houses are a bit bigger for somewhat less money.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, is it as competitive as it is out as you get closer to Boston?
I haven't personally seen as many bidding wars per se, but you are seeing the properties that are prepped and ready to go and priced appropriately, and they're actually marketed and shown really well. They're selling quickly. They're selling in a week, and they're selling slightly over asking.
And say $1.5 million in Sudbury. What's that getting you size wise? Is that like a 3,000 square foot house?
Probably
4
more
or
like
5?
five. Probably more like 5 or 6,000. It might be built in the early 2000s. A nice home, could be fairly cookie cutter.
Yeah.
But a nice home in a subdivision in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
You get a lot for 1.5. You do. You get a lot for $1 million, actually, if you play your cards right.
Right. It's certainly more than you're going to get the further you go in towards Boston.
Yeah. I mean, $1 million in Wellesley is not going to get you much, which is sad.
And Sudbury borders Wayland as well, right?
It does.
Yeah. So I actually lived in Natick for a while, so I'm familiar with Sudbury and Wayland, and Wayland's another place that's kind of getting crazy pricey.
Yeah, and it is. And you see, I saw a home in Wayland the other day, and this was just a very small ranch on a busy road for I think $600,000.
Wow,
which is crazy. That's well, we're not going to talk national, but that's double the national average, right? I mean, that's pretty bananas.
Yeah, paying $600s for a ranch on a busy street, it's tough. But I mean, in that area, you probably don't have a lot of alternatives. I mean, It's not like Natick's cheap anymore, or even Framingham.
No, that's the thing. It's not. People are moving. Natick was the next stop. Natick was the next stop out after Wellesley.
Yeah.
And that market has absolutely blown up. I lived in Natick 5-6 years ago before we moved to Framingham.
Yeah.
And I didn't even consider buying because the market had already started going crazy.
Right.
And for a $500,000 budget in Natick, I think you literally would be getting close to a teardown. If you can even get it, you're not going to get it because a builder's going to buy it, and they're going to build side-by-sides with 0 lot lines. Yeah. Because that's what people want.
Yeah, I've been shocked. They're buying up ranches and putting up essentially giant duplexes.
Yep, everywhere.
It's insane.
Yeah.
You have to wonder how much longer it can continue the way it is.
I know, that is a concern, but people are buying them.
Yeah.
Needham. Everything in Needham is a teardown, and they're all selling.
Yeah. Did you ever think you'd see the day where you could build, 55-plus condos right on the pike in Framingham and sell them for close to $700, if not
insane.
more?
I sold one last year at that complex, actually, and the highest priced one was a standalone. It sold for north of $1 million.
And it's literally on the pike.
You can hear the pike.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful complex, and the developer is, I think, a great builder.
He is. That's Brendan, right?
Brendan Properties, phenomenal builder, and my clients overall were very happy. But you're on the pike.
Yeah.
You're on the pike. There's always compromise.
Well, that's the thing. If you want new construction now, you're pretty much going where they didn't want to build houses before, right?
Yeah, correct, for the most part. Yeah.
Wow, impressive. So when you're dealing with buyers, and I just, we like to talk about how you prep people for the market that we're in these days. How do you prep your buyers for what they're going to be dealing with?
I think first and foremost is to get them in touch with someone like Mike. That's a lot of buyers are coming into this market, and unfortunately, they have a misconception as to what they can afford, whether it's from their family, their friends, or just what they've read. But you need to talk to a mortgage professional like Mike, preferably Mike.
I was just going to say,
I agree, 100%.
Like Mike, but not Mike.
Kind of like him, less of a tan. You really have to get a grip on that because the last thing you want to do in a competitive market is to go in and try to bid on a home, A, without a pre-approval, or B, not knowing what you can actually afford, whether you have an approval from some random company or not.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you find out that when it breaks down monthly, you can't afford it.
Yeah.
That's the last thing you want.
And I'm always amazed at what people think they can afford versus what the reality is.
It's insane.
Yeah. I had somebody tell me yesterday that he thought he could afford the mid-3s and swore up and down that he claimed all his income, because really, if you're dealing with self-employed buyers, that's what it comes down to, is what you claimed. He literally claimed $367 in income.
That's not good.
Yeah.
That's not going to help.
Yeah, that's not going to help. And that's why you really need to start out by getting pre-qualified, because you may make $200,000 a year, but if you're claiming $300, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and it leads to problems.
And I would imagine that's even more important when you're dealing with the high end, especially in competitive markets.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I do find that higher end, and again, that's kind of a relative term around here, but I think higher end buyers typically, generally speaking, have a better grip on their finances.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to, look, I'm not a millionaire, but I have a decent grip. But I think they're, in general, more in tune with their wealth and their ability to purchase.
Yes.
That's what I've been finding.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that.
And I worry less about who they've been approved with, the higher the price point goes.
Yes.
Sometimes it's a tiny credit union, and I know that they know their stuff. I know that they've done their work, and they're solid buyers. I mean, I always call the lender. I always call them, but I worry about it a little less.
Well, yeah, I would say at the higher end, you probably do have to worry about that less. But I would say as you get down into the conventional world, sub 500,000, that's where it gets super important, because if you go to the wrong place, deals get screwed up all the time by people that don't know what they're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Mike can talk to that. I mean, it unfortunately happens every day.
Yeah. Yeah. So you really do have to work with a solid team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
How about sellers? How are you prepping your sellers these days? I mean, it's still kind of a seller's market for the most part, right?
In a lot of towns it is. And as much as I said Sudbury, some of these price points are moving, it comes down to pricing. And it comes down to being realistic with your goals. And it's hard. If you built your home and you've lived in it for 20 years and it's your baby and you raised your family there, I understand there's an emotional attachment. But if the neighbor's house across the street that's identical sold for 10% less than what you want to list for, there's a problem.
Yes.
And there's a pretty decent amount of market data out there in most of the towns that we're working in where we can show you what's selling, what's not selling, what your home is and what your home is not. And you need to listen. And I will say our brand and our firm, our office, we tend to not take on listings with unrealistic buyers or unrealistic sellers.
Right.
If you're a home seller or a home owner, there's a big difference.
Right. And that's something that we tell our customers too, especially when we're referring them to a quality agent, is you're going to be paying a lot of money for the advice that agent's going to give you.
Yes.
It doesn't make any sense to pay them the money and ignore the advice.
Yeah, correct.
If you want to sell your house, listen to the pricing strategy.
Right.
I love these people that just want to test the market. I'm using air quotes even though you can't see them on the radio.
You said it.
So that's why I had to say it.
I would have done it.
But testing the market, I mean, it's not really a good idea. I don't know any realtor that says testing the market is great, especially when their idea of testing the market is 30% over the market.
So that's the problem. There's a difference between, and I'm going to air quote under the table, testing the market and actually just doing sort of a try price. I mean, a try price of a few points over what you think fair market value is and where it should sell, that's different than doing 10, 15, 20% over. I had a home last year in South Boston, which is, we were just talking about it. It's a pretty hot market, and it has been. That sat for months because it was a 20% premium that my clients, who were good friends, wanted to try. They wanted to test. It didn't work. Backfired.
Right.
And, maybe shame on me for not pushing it a little harder, but I can't force their hand.
Right.
And
it's kind of especially in these days, maybe 8 years ago it wasn't as big of a deal, but if a house sits on the market for 20, 30, 40 days, everybody assumes there's a problem with it. They don't even look at the price. They just assume something's wrong with the house.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, it's not really fair, but in my experience, that's what happens.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. That's how I coach my buyers. If a home has been sitting for 30 days, there's one of two things. It's overpriced or there's a lot of issues with it, or maybe both.
Yeah.
Right. But usually it's an unrealistic homeowner who thinks the world of their home, and it's just not reality.
Right. And I'll also say, and I'm sure you've seen this too, Mike, is that usually the people, when they're selling a house and buying, the one they're selling, they want the premium on. The one they're buying, they want the deal on.
Isn't that fun?
So their house is worth extra money because it's theirs.
Yeah.
Everybody else's house is, well, it's just sentimental. You can't expect to get paid for that.
Exactly.
I mean, they make your argument for you, but still don't see it often.
Yeah. I'm glad you said it.
Yes. Well, I'm sure it does get frustrating, but it does. I will say, for the most part, it really does seem like most people are willing to listen now. They get that working with a professional agent is important.
Yeah.
We've all seen people that try to do it themselves. Those, I can't even remember the websites that they used to use to sell your house by yourself. Yeah. I mean, you don't really see anybody doing that stuff anymore. It doesn't work.
No, not a lot. And not a lot in the higher end towns. I think it's less and less.
Yes.
I think that's my experience.
Yeah. And really, when it gets right down to it, you're paying a real estate agent for not just their knowledge, their expertise, their advice, but also for their negotiating skills.
Correct.
I mean, that's usually where you see these private sales fall apart, is when it comes down to negotiating.
Yeah.
They're always way far apart, and it's tough when there's nobody as a go-between to make that happen.
Right. We've had several this year in Sudbury and other towns that were far apart, started far apart. People bid at all sorts of crazy prices. People bid at assessed value. We can talk about that another day. And when you're 20, 30% apart, who's going to make that difference up? It has to come from buyer and seller, but they're not going to do it themselves.
Right.
That's what we're here for.
Right.
We're not just therapists. We're negotiators.
Yeah, you got to cover it all, right?
Correct.
So going back to the Sudbury market a little bit, when you're dealing with buyers, do you have first-time buyers that are looking in the Sudbury market and the surrounding towns?
Yeah, I had a few this year.
I always like to ask our guests, what's a typical first-time buyer going to get for a property in in Sudbury or surrounding town?
I would say first-time buyer in Sudbury, maybe $500,000 to a $700,000-ish price range,
right?
Which is kind of crazy to say.
Yeah.
You could get a small colonial, 3-bed, 4-bed, hopefully with a matching septic system. Built in the 60s, 70s. Again, 0.9 of an acre of land. Good schools, probably in need of some updating, but a quality home. Hopefully not. There's not a lot of crazy busy roads in Sudbury. I find most of the single yellow line roads are actually pretty quaint.
Yes.
So you get quite a nice property, and I think that's why all price points that I've seen are moving in Sudbury.
Gotcha.
The good ones.
What about inventory in Sudbury and surrounding areas? Are we still having issues? Or are you actually seeing more people willing to sell?
I think year over year we're actually pretty cose. Last time I looked, I think it was last month, and it was pretty flat year over year. I would have to break it down by price point. I do think the higher end has seen a lot more activity this year.
Right.
And they're really the low end, quote unquote, in Sudbury. It is 400,000, 500.
Right, and I imagine those sell pretty much immediately.
Yeah, typically. There's a few, if they are on a busier road, they will sit for a little longer. But
right.
They usually all sell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it really comes down to where you want to be, right? Do you want the better location, or do you want to be in Sudbury?
Right.
Obviously, better location, meaning off the busy road.
Yes.
So I want to give out your contact info before I forget, Keith. So if you're looking to buy or sell anywhere in Boston, Metro West, give Keith a call. It's Keith Magnus with Engel & Volkers in Wellesley. You can reach him at 857-540-1121. Again, that's 857-540-1121. Keith Magnus at Engel & Volkers in Wellesley. I want to thank you for coming on the show. It was great to have you, Keith.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate it.
And Mike, thank you, too, for joining us.
Yes, my pleasure. I'm glad I contributed so much.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back with more Get Real after this.